step of his management.
We've got a slightly closer shot now. I don't know how we've done that by some miracle, but we can see that the
IV
drip
bag,
now,
that the patient's head or something is sort of basically between the three white helmets, and where the white helmet on the right is looking down, he'd be looking at the patient, or she, I can't tell from here, and the patient's there.
I wonder if his family is watching this now, or if they're just a little bit up the hill. If they are watching, our hearts go out to them. It must be a great relief to them to see this now.
Well, I would be, I think, as it's been going on for a while, I think probably the patient's family is having special information. I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
You would certainly hope so at this point. So what's the next step? I mean, just recapping for people who may have just joined us, we are watching the imminent, it would seem, the imminent rescue of Stuart Diver after a day-long operation. I guess no one really thought it would take this long. He was discovered at around 5:45 this morning, a long time ago. It's coming up to, well, it's nearly 20 to 5, so we're talking at around 11 hours it's taken to get him out of this hole. He's about to be brought down. What would you say is in that drip?
Well, there'd be electrolytes, there'd be fluids, but the fact that he also hasn't had any nutrition, and one would be giving him dextrose. That's what the brain and what the body needs. It's sort of the main nutrient, and he'd be getting all that. I'm trying to read the hand signals of the gentleman in the middle, but I can't quite work out. I think they're discussing how best to transfer the patient. I don't think this is a treatment issue. I think it's logistics of how to get him out of that hole, and then from there on in. How to
stabilise him and make sure that he has the least possible rocky trip to the air ambulance.
Exactly.
Can you give things like, I mean, if, for example, he's in pain, we heard earlier that he had lacerations, and we really don't know the extent of any other possible injuries, although he's been lucid, goodness knows how, but he's been lucid, it would seem, for most of the day. He's been conversing with his rescuers. If he is in pain, can you give painkillers like pethidine or morphine in these situations, or are they a risk?
No, you actually have the whole gambit, and one of the few things we do in emergency medicine or rescue is to make sure that the patient doesn't have pain, and you can even give local anaesthetic blocks where you can block off a whole leg. You can give the gas, the nitrous oxide, the one ladies have to have babies, which is a very, very effective painkiller. And then, of course, you can give all the gambit of injections of morphine or whatever is needed. Absolutely, because a patient in pain needs pain relief, and one really doesn't worry that much about the effect on the mental status if one has a controlled situation.
So you don't have to worry in situations, I mean, because I'm thinking obviously from an ignorant layperson's point of view, lucky you're here, you don't have to worry about after hypothermia and after the stress and the trauma that he's been through, that if you give him a mind-numbing or body-numbing painkiller, that you might induce, I don't know, a coma or something, and this is not an issue.
It is an issue, but not in this case, because they've got an intravenous line. If you can give these painkillers intravenously, get it straight into the circulation, you give tiny amounts and titrate it to the patient's need. On the other hand, if you had to give it intramuscular, let's say you had to give it into his shoulder or into his leg, and it's all cold and the blood supply is not there, it wouldn't be absorbed, and suddenly when the patient warms up, all that might wash into his system and create havoc. But on the other hand, we also have complete reversal agents, which are in the news on other issues, like naloxone and things like that, which can turn those agents around at the end of the needle.
Okay, so it would be a priority at the scene. If a patient like this is in pain, you give the painkiller and you think about, and if there are any adverse consequences, you can reverse it, do you mean? Is that what
Your job in this, part of your job here, is to make sure the patient has no pain, because pain in itself can worsen shock.
It's traumatizing, of course. Yeah. Okay, now we're looking at gloves going on here. They look like surgical gloves. What might this mean?
No, those are the standard issue ambulance blue latex glove, which are very, very tough, which are used in any patient encounter for precautions. It's just part of the rules. We use them in hospital, they use them in ambulance, they use them in any health setting.
We saw what looked like red ties being handed. The gentleman who's putting the gloves on, I think, received some red ties before. Might they be to tie the patient down to the board?
I really couldn't say I didn't see them.
Right, okay. Now there are tarpaulins we can see above. This is so imminent. We're talking our way through it. We're speculating here. We're afraid to go to a commercial break or to anything else because we think this is about to happen, and we've been waiting for it all day. We've been waiting. I mean, and our waiting is completely irrelevant to Stuart Diver's waiting and to the waiting of the people on that hill. But it looks like it's about to happen.
It also looks like we're running out of a bit of daylight. I don't know when up in the mountains, being further south, etc., to get darker than a lot of other parts of Australia. So I don't know how much time we've got there.
Okay, let's go to Hugh Riminton, who is at Thredbo. Hugh, you've been listening to all of this, and obviously you've got people around you. Have you picked up anything else about what we're seeing on the hill?
Well, we're about to have this news conference, in fact, from the head of the police inquiry here, or the police operation here, and also from the head of the ambulance service. They've just put that back by 10 minutes. I don't know if that indicates anything. We're also seeing these blankets turn up as well. I'm sure you're seeing them as well. There's been a series of them they brought in down from the right-hand side, and obviously that is part of the deal as well, just to keep them warm as they start to get them out. But the reference to the light is certainly a fair one. The light is dropping fast. They have, as we know from the previous long nights, some pretty effective floodlight type of capability here. And light, I don't think, will be too much of a problem for them in there, although, of course, it does make it that much more difficult for us to see what's going on. But I noticed that the orange-coated workers, I think they're from the State Emergency Service, are all walking out now. They've been there for hours, initially passing things up and away, bits of rubble and stuff, then passing down things like stretchers and those splints that they've been using to shore up the tunnel, and also the blankets. Now they're moving away. They're moving away to the right.
Yep.
Who knows what that portends?
Dr. Gordian Fulder, the director of the emergency department at St Vincent's Hospital, is with me for people who have just joined. Perhaps he can shed some light on that. Dr. Fulder, assuming that the SES people are moving away, they're leaving the work to the paramedics. Is that right?
No, I would take a different interpretation. But is that they only want limited number of people on the wreckage, and if they're going to transport the patient out, there's going to be a whole lot of people walking together like a big crab, if you will, across that section. So you would take all unnecessary, or for that moment, unnecessary personnel off that section because it's still potentially unstable, and it's just going to be the one act of moving the patient across, and I don't know, there'll be at least about 6 people all trying to negotiate across there, and I think that's why they've taken the SES workers back, so that I think it's going to happen. Okay,
you think it's imminent. That orange tape, is that the orange, can you see that? That's a roll of orange tape in about the middle of the screen. Well, is that what might be used to tie him to the stretcher? I know you're peering here.
Yes, this is really guessing, but yes, we do tape the patient, and especially the head and the shoulders, to the stretcher. It sounds sort of a bit draconian, but it's the safest way to actually immobilise a head and a neck, is to tape the patient with red sort of tape, which actually goes across the patient's skin and goes down onto the edges of the spinal board. Okay. Hugh, I believe that the press conference is underway. We might stay with these, I was going to say we might stay with these pictures. We'll go to the press conference.
Yes. Just a few rules before it starts. Please ensure all mobile phones are turned off so we get a good quality sound coming through. And just in the area to my immediate left, if we could please ensure that no one goes in that area where the geologists are. There is some sensitive equipment there is being affected by use of mobile phones, so if you could keep away from that area. I hand you over to Superintendent
Might just move them in a fraction before we start, please.
Yes, sir.
Could you say your name and title, please?
Charlie Sanderson, Superintendent on the site controller here.
Superintendent, what's the very latest, please?
The very latest is that once again we believe that the removal of the male victim who is still alive, that's Stuart Diver, is pretty imminent at this moment. At this point in time I'm able to say that we're almost through the structural issues that are stopping us from removing him, and he's practically being placed into the hands of medical teams who will decide on the exact moment of his removal. it's been a long, hard day, an extremely hard day today, because you'll recall that this morning I told you that we felt that we would have him out of there in a much shorter space of time than what's happened. About 10 a.m. I was informed that the cavity that had been excavated to reach where Stuart was had proceeded in for a distance of some metres, and all the rubble had been removed from there, and the rescuers thought that they were within about 2 metres of where he was, and they were maintaining contact with him. They were then staggered to find that the contact they had made with him was through a small hole, which was about 10 centimetres in diameter, and that he was in fact below another concrete structure, one level below where we believed he was. In fact, that structure of Bimbadeen, there are 4 slabs of concrete, and we thought he was between level 2 and level 3, those slabs all being precariously balanced on the side of the mountain. When we got that far in, we then found that in fact he was between level 3 and level 4. So all day, bit by bit, those 2 slabs have been cut away to a point in time where we're just about ready to get him out.
So when you say just about ready,
Well, I don't know. You know, it's impossible to make predictions. There are doctors and medical people on site, ambulance paramedics, and as I said, it's my belief that the situation is just about in their hands.
What is his condition, sir? What is his condition?
His condition at this time would be classified as serious but stable. He is conscious. He's been conscious all day. We've had a SCAT paramedic down there talking to him the whole day as a lifeline. And the other thing we're doing is we've got what's called a bear warmer, the hose for it, which is puts warm air. They put this hose down into his shirt to dry out his clothes, as there is a stream of water running down beside him. So we need to get his core temperature up. They're doing that until they get into a stage of releasing him from the situation that he's in. Once they do that, the doctors will then stabilise his condition on the site, right beside the hole where he is, before he's moved out of there.
What about his state of mind?
Sorry?
What about his state of mind?
His state of mind, I believe, is quite good. He's communicating with our paramedic, has been all day.
What is your concern about going into the night now?
Well, of course we've got to go into the night, but we're just ever hopeful that this can be finished as soon as possible. The rescue efforts are continuing in other areas, apart from this particular location where we know that Stuart is alive, and in fact I'm able to say that in the last few minutes 2 further bodies have been removed from another location further down the hill.
The official death toll is 6 at the moment?
That's correct. Although those bodies have not all been removed, in fact at this point only 3 have been removed, but we have located 3 other persons who are confirmed deceased, and the removal of those people will be a further slow process.
What's the breakup of male to female, sir?
I'm unable to say that.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you've been saying to Mr. Diver in there? Can you just elaborate what some of the communication has been?
No, it's not something that I'm aware of. I know things, for example, that he has reported. We got a small torch down to him, and he was able to inform the rescue operators what the cavity was like around him. I know that, for example, he has been able to move certain of his body parts on request, like, for example, move your left hand, yes, that type of thing. And as far as what he's been saying, he's built up some rapport with one of the paramedics who's been with him all day, and, the conversations they've been having, I think, are pretty much private things between themselves.
Are there more people around here? Are you expecting any other people to be alive in there?
As we have been right from the start, we are gravely concerned for the well-being of everybody in there. It is an absolute miracle that we've found this person alive, and I guess we can hope and pray that miracles will keep happening and we might find somebody else.
Are there more people around him?
Diver to the surface?
Well, it depends which surface. It's on a very steep slope, that hill.
Has he been
and it's, I suppose, from the top slab where we first started cutting this morning, it's about 2 metres.
About 2 metres,
yes.
yeah.
Has he been able to tell you whether there are other people in his near vicinity?
When this disaster happened, his wife was in the near vicinity with him. We have not located where she is. He is unable to help us with that. They were in a bedroom, and of course the whole bedroom has been devastated. And he is left in a very small cavity with concrete all around him.
Has he heard anything, or does he believe people are alive?
No.
Has he been able to give you an idea of the size of where he is? And
yes, where his feet are, it appears that between the concrete slabs there's about 30 centimetres, and where his head is, it's somewhere between 40 and 50 centimetres, and he's lying on concrete.
Can he see any bodies near him?
No.
Is he on his back or his front? Is he...
He's lying on his back. I'm unable to answer that.
How much
There
of a
were
risk to
cries
his
heard
health
from
is there?
the rubble early on after the tragedy Wednesday night. Any indications whether it was Stuart calling out?
No, I'm not able to say that.
And
I don't
tell
know.
us what he was wearing?
I don't know that either.
How much of a risk to his health and, in fact, to his life is the hypothermia that Stuart's suffering?
Quite a serious risk. And there is another number of factors of anybody that's in that situation for that period of time. We really can't ascertain his true condition until we get him out.
The 3 bodies located that you haven't extracted, when were they found? And in what part of the on what part of the site?
This has been happening during the day yesterday. Early yesterday morning there was one, the arm of one person was seen, and subsequent work around that area, which is below where Stuart is. At this point in time, that's been held up because it's not possible to work in both those locations. The others have been found further down the hill, and work is proceeding in those areas.
And that's a briefing that's been underway by police and ambulance officers at Thredbo. It would appear that the retrieval, the rescue of Stuart Diver is absolutely imminent. I know that we have been saying that for about, we've been saying it's been imminent for about half an hour now. It appears that it is about to happen very soon. I am joined, as I have been now, and as we have been throughout the day, by Dr. Gordian Fulder, who's the Director of the Emergency Department at St Vincent's Hospital. He has had quite some significant experience in these sorts of operations. Dr. Fulder, you've heard that briefing. Stuart Diver's condition has been described as serious but stable. Is that good news to you?
I think it's very good news. And I think we can say that he's not life-threatened. It'd be critical. If there was any really big concern, it'd be a critical call. A serious but stable means they're giving a cautious but optimistic that he isn't totally out of the woods as far as they can assess, but they can't assess everything there.
Okay, let's bring Hugh Rimerton in on this conversation. We can make it a three-way conversation. Hugh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed, Tracy.
Are you getting anything more from where you are?
Well, as we've been hearing from Superintendent Sanderson and Mr. Dent from the ambulance service behind them, the work, of course, has been continuing. And it really has... you've used the word imminent, I think. I think we shall strike it from the dictionary. But there's certainly that fevered level of activity is continuing. There's that man standing there. I don't know if you've got a shot of it at the moment. Two of them, in fact, side by side with their white helmets. I think that's where that action is. I can see a head lower down. You can just see him coming back up again there. They're obviously into this tunnelled area a fair way. We know it goes for at least 2 metres. And what can we say? We wait for it. As we heard from the superintendent, it's now in the hands of medical advice as to how and when they move him. And so it'll be the doctors right there who are making those decisions.
Hugh, Charlie Sanderson, Superintendent Charlie Sanderson, just said in the briefing that he felt that he was about to be brought out of the hole. But Dr. Fulder, as you look at these pictures, do you feel convinced that he is there? He is there where all of these men are looking, and that they are basically placed around his stretcher?
I'm convinced. And the other thing is that to me it sort of conjures up a little bit of an image of nearly a birth. I mean, the patient is about to be delivered. There's this expectation, this getting, that this life is going to come out where we thought maybe there's nothing going to much come out. But no, the patient's right there. He's in his bear hugger, which is a thing that most hospitals now have, in that it's sort of like a sleeping bag, which at the end there's a big fan which blows hot, warm air all around the patient. We get it from Canada and things. So I think it really is, the patient is just there, and I think they're just getting everything as perfect as they can before they take the next step.
The yellow stretchers are just a little way up the slope. We can see the bottom of one just a little way up the slope from where the activity is. Do you feel that they will pick him up and just take him those few steps up and put him into those yellow stretchers?
Well, we saw people putting machine monitors and things onto that stretcher, but just looking from here, it looks like a pretty tricky sort of a trail to go up there, and I doubt whether they actually put him up there onto that. We have to wait. They seem to be looking towards their left, or on the view on the screen towards the right of where they want to go.
They seem crouched down around it. I mean, I watched them crouch down before, and I guess you did too, and thought when they stand up they're going to be carrying him. But is that what you think they're doing, that they're sort of crouching there and getting ready to lift? Or?
Well, the patient is actually at ground level, and you always crouch around the patient on the ground, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And
they're all crouched around, though. I mean, surrounding, it would seem surrounding him if we surmise that he's there.
Yeah, but if you look at the body language of the rescuers and the medical and ambulance team around there, the body language is one of, we've got control here, now let's just take our time and get it right, and a couple of minutes here or there is of no event. There's no rapid movements, there's no snapping of orders, it's not like a bad episode of ER, it's definitely control, and it's got a good feeling about it.
Okay, Dr. Gordian Fulda from St Vincent's Hospital, Hugh Remington, please stay with us. We will go to a break now. I can assure you if anything happens during the break, we will come straight back to this rescue operation, what looks like the culmination of this rescue operation at Thredbo. Back in a few moments. Rescue operation at Thredbo. You may be looking at me right now. I'm looking at pictures from the scene. It would seem that, and there you are, now you're looking at them too, and it would seem that the rescue of Stuart Diver, the man who has been trapped for so many days and so many nights now in the wreckage of these two ski lodges, is about to happen. We are surmising, and we have Dr. Gordian Fulda here with us, the director of the emergency department at St Vincent's Hospital, who seems to agree that in fact Stuart Diver is right there. He is, it would seem, out from underground, and he is there where all of those people are crouched around, probably on a spinal pallet, if you like, that they will lift up and they will remove to a stretcher, and then he'll be taken to hospital. Hugh Remington is on the mountain. Hugh, hello.
Hello, Tracy.
We're waiting and waiting.
We're waiting for that first glimpse, and I haven't had it so far, I have to say. I mean, it has been as it's been, in that they're moving, as Dr. Fulda has said, with this quite deliberate care and control, and all the time they seem to be working a little bit further out towards the opening. But it's funny, we've got, as I speak at the moment, there's a news conference going on with a superintendent from the fire department who says it's been like working in a refrigerator, and there was his phrase, and very grueling work, but he says the morale on the slopes at the moment is unbelievable. Even though there's obviously been some grim discoveries today, the morale is unbelievably good. So, and why wouldn't it be? We think he's just in there, just out of sight, and that he's well.
Is Superintendent Paul Rugg from the Fire Brigade still speaking, Hugh? And I'm just wondering...
He is. In fact, I think we can cross to him, I think.
Let's do that. This is Superintendent Paul Rugg from the Fire Brigade.
One, but there will be another. As far as that, we can't comment, and we don't want to raise people's spirits, and that we can't say that. We've been very fortunate we've had one, and that's been very fortunate. Right, thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
You're right. Fire Brigade Commander, is it?
Superintendent.
Superintendent Rugg, just in time to hear him finish. Did he advance our knowledge of this situation any further?
I have to say I didn't listen to it that closely, because my focus was more on the hillside behind us. Except to hear him say that they are completely confident that this is going to come to a successful conclusion, this particular investigation, operation with Mr. Divers, and that it's close.
Dr. Fulda, we were listening before to another press briefing from police and from ambulance officers who said, amongst other things, that Stuart Diver, where he has been lying in a constant stream of water. What does that say to you? Does that make his survival even more miraculous?
Absolutely, and as far as if you have a cushion of air between you and what is freezing, that gives you terrific insulation. If you have dampness and the water itself wouldn't be far off freezing itself, it's nearly unbelievable.
And also to hear Superintendent Ruggs saying that it's like working in a refrigerator down there. I mean, this man is a remarkable survivor.
I can?
Absolutely.
And absolutely.
I think we're going to hear a lot more of it, but whatever you believe in and whatever this patient believes in, somebody or something's looked after this gentleman.
Okay, now that's a tube that's being removed there. It looked like something was broken off then, and a tube removed.
I mean, they're all bending down at once. When they all go down at once is when they're going to lift him out.
Right.
That's...
Mind you, they've all gone down at once a couple of times, and we've all got excited and full of anticipation, and then they stand up again.
And the other clue will be if you actually can hear them count to 3. If you think, because on these sort of things, there is a person who is elected as the team leader, and that person calls the shots and says, okay, on the count of 3 or whatever, and you all lift at once, because it's a very organised and practiced thing, because you can imagine the last thing you want to do is somebody picks up the one end and as an uneven lift or anything.
In these situations, given that the family of Mr. Diver have been on standby anxiously, you can't imagine what must have been going through their minds all day. How far away must they be kept in order not to impede the process, but how close would they be allowed to be?
I would say that the near family, given any other site where there wasn't any danger, and even in hospitals and resuscitations now, one tries to get the loved ones immediately next to touching the patient, and that's good for the loved ones and great for the patient. And so I assume it's part of the natural disaster we have here, that it's only essential personnel. I mean, there's not a lot of people there, and we saw the SES people being backed off, and it's just those people who absolutely need to be there.
Now we see this pallet that seems to be going back in, assuming that we thought he was on one. What do we make of this?
Obviously, the patient would be secure, right? I feel very confident in saying that. The patient's totally secure, so all these other bits of spine board somehow to give more secure footing, to allow the mechanics of moving Mr. Diver.
Well, we know that this is about to happen. We were told at around 4:15, I think it was, that it was happening in 15 minutes, but as has been the case all day, this is a very slow process, and obviously no one wants to rush it, no one wants to take a risk at the last minute when we're in the shadow when they are in the shadow of completing this operation.
And I mean, I might get thrown out or have something thrown at me, but one thing's great. In other words, they're doing what they professionally have to do, and it's not sort of a staged or anything for the media. They're doing everything exactly as it should be done, and that's why there's none of this sort of, in 10 minutes we'll do it, or there's no sort of, they're just getting it right.
Oh, good heavens. Look, media considerations are so way down on the list of priorities here, it doesn't bear discussion, but we are waiting very anxiously, as is most of Australia. I mean, this program is going out nationally. The whole country is watching this. Their thoughts are with these people, with these rescuers, with this man, with his family, and indeed with the families of all of the other people. Just to recap, in case you haven't been up to date on the latest information coming out of Thredbo, the death toll now is officially 6. We don't have genders. We don't know how many men and how many women are dead. There are 6 people dead. There is 1 man miraculously alive. He was found this morning sometime between 5:30 and 6 o'clock this morning. He was found when a fire brigade officer heard uncommon, unusual noises coming. He directed that the noise of all equipment be shut off, and he yelled out, "This is the fire brigade here, can you hear me?" And the words came back, "I can hear you," which must have been a miraculous, euphoric time for those people, because amazingly, even under the circumstances, given the climactic conditions, no one had really given up hope, and we can see tape going in now. It would, I hesitate to say it, it would appear something is about to happen. This tape will be to tie Mr. Diver down to the pallet. Is that right, Dr. Fuller?
No, this is not your routine sort of tape, because that tape is actually it's not sticky. If you look at it, it's a very large roll, and I don't know what that tape's for.
Okay. Well, they're obviously not going to cart him up the hill with it, so I wonder what they are doing.
Yeah. And the other thing is one can sort of assess there's a fair bit of light coming out of the cavern, if you will, and by now I should imagine that the temperature in that little cavern has risen significantly as all part of getting a warmer environment for Mr. Diver and getting it under control.
Okay. Well, I think at this point we may take a brief commercial break. We will keep an eye on proceedings on the hill, and we will certainly cross straight back if we see anything happening. It would seem it's going to happen soon, but how soon is anybody's guess, and we obviously don't want them to rush it. We'll take a short break. Live pictures from Thredbo. These are the ambulance paramedics whose job it is to rescue now, to preserve the life of Stuart Diver, the man who was discovered shortly after 5:30 this morning. He was discovered in a crevice. It would appear he was under 4 layers of concrete. He had been living in the Bimbadine Lodge, which was the lower of the 2 lodges that collapsed at around 11:30 on Wednesday night. And the floors of that lodge had concrete. They were solid concrete floors. And it would appear that, and we're having a bit of a problem with the picture there, but it would appear that he was found underneath 4 layers of concrete, which might give you some insight into why it has taken all day to get him out. We were told around an hour ago that his retrieval was imminent. We've got pictures back again now. Imminent has turned out to be not as imminent as we thought, but we know it is about to happen. I am joined by Dr. Gordian Fulder, who's the Director of the Emergency Department at St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney, and at the village on the mountain by Hugh Rimmington. And it would seem that there is a blue pallet that we're watching here on our screens now, Dr. Fulder, that's been brought in. Do you think perhaps that that's going to be used to carry him out?
No, I think they've probably already done most of the things they have to do to carry him out. Once again, just following the lines of the people talking. I don't know if the paramedic on the bottom right-hand corner is the one that has had the personal contact with Mr. Diver through his ordeal, the last part of his ordeal, that is. But there's somebody just down there, within a foot or two of the paramedic who's kneeling down just past the O of Thredbo.
Why is it taking so long? Now, this is not a question with any sense of complaint in it. I don't want you to think that, but let's try and give people an insight into why. Obviously, it's taken a long time to burrow through the concrete that was surrounding him, but why has it taken so long in this last hour to finally get him out?
Well, just take a step back. Medically speaking, one of the simple issues that still hasn't been clarified is that how hypothermic was Mr. Diver. He had to be very chilled, and you don't move a patient ideally unless you've got his body temperature up to about 35 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So in the low 30s, if you move a patient, even though they're talking, well, they shouldn't probably be talking to you at that temperature.
Right.
But if to bring somebody's temperature up to a more above 35 degrees means you can transport them safely. And it may just be taking that little bit longer with the bear hugger, with the warm intravenous fluids to bring the temperature up, and that's maybe all they're waiting for. It could be just something as simple as that.
Okay. So you say that they really shouldn't be talking to you at such a low temperature. Do you mean then that conversation, after having established that he was alive and who he was, conversation would have been kept to a minimum then?
Oh, no. What I'm saying is that if your body temperature drops very, very low, the first thing that happens, like anybody who gets cold, your skin constricts, mm-hmm. and then slowly your toes, your feet, the things that are furthest away from your heart, they shut down, literally, mm-hmm. and no blood flow goes to them, and frostbite and all that sort of thing can happen. And then your mental functions, as your body temperature then can't be maintained anymore, your mental functions then decrease, and you get drowsy and so forth. That's what I was getting at. But he's been talking, but as I say, to get his temperature up even those couple of degrees, given that the outside air temperature down at Thredbo, Hugh might say, but I'd estimate be getting close to getting down to the 0, 1 or 2 mark now. We had a little puff of mist across, I thought, a little while ago. So the air temperature and everything else it's not like in a room, it is very cold.
Does that then mean, if you talk about the way the body slows down in such freezing cold conditions, and we were given an insight not so very long ago into the fact that he had moving water, some sort of a stream in the cavern in which he was found, which would have made it even colder. Does that tell us that it was in fact an Herculean effort for him to even talk in the first place to his rescuers this morning?
Well, yes, but it all remains to be told to us, but if he was able to manage to maybe sip some of the water that was next to him, that may account for why he's lasted so well so long.
I see. Well, that adds a new element to it, I suppose.
Yeah.
How much of, with temperature considerations and what we've just talked about, how many of the hours in which he has lain under there waiting to be rescued might he have been sleeping?
Don't know, but I mean, one of the things you don't do is try and fall asleep. We're told he's a trained alpine guide.
Is he moving? Hang on. I think they're moving. Here. We can see his feet.
Yes.
They are his feet are bare.
No, they were. Oh.
Look, there are bare feet. That seems extraordinary, but anyway, he's moved. He has been lifted up. He is most definitely Stuart Diver. What you are watching now is Stuart Diver, who has been lifted up. He is no longer underground. There is a man to the left of frame with a hat on. His bare feet have just disappeared. They have disappeared behind a tree, but they will come out on the other side very shortly. He is well and truly out of the hole, and this is a wonderful moment in this rescue operation. It has taken many, many, many hours. It's taken something like 11.5 hours since he was found this morning. He is behind the tree. We're sure we will see him soon. But it's finally happened. But his feet were bare. Why would they not have wrapped up? And the bottom of his legs, I'm being told, were also bare, Dr. Fulder. Does that astonish you?
To a point it does, but there must be a good reason for it.
Okay, it's a shame this is happening behind the tree now, but what would these people be doing now?
Well, as I say, we don't know how much they were or were not able to do. I mean, one of the reasons the feet might be bare is they mightn't have been able to get to his feet.
Right.
I mean, it might be down their end and things, and maybe they've pulled him out, and maybe they're covering him up now with blankets and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, that would be the most likely explanation. Just couldn't get, I mean, his head was closest to where the hole was. And remember, he got fed the tube and the hot thing, so therefore they just may not have been able to safely, even tunnel in next to him to do it, and they've got him out. And of course his clothes would have all been wet, and they would cut them off and now obviously try and get him as warm as possible.
Okay, so what they're doing behind this tree now is wrapping him up, wrapping up his feet, getting him warm.
Yeah, I mean...
It all happened fairly quickly too.
They haven't gone far. As I said, they just want to get a more stable environment, and there still isn't a mad rush of things or anything like that.
But just recapping, if you've only just tuned in, the moment that we have all been waiting for, obviously Mr. Diver's family more than anyone, and it must be a wonderful moment for rescuers. Stuart Diver, whose name still hasn't been officially released, but we're all confident that Stuart Diver is the man who has been in that hole all day, not indeed all day, but since 11:30 on Wednesday night, when these two ski lodges collapsed under an avalanche of something like 200 tonnes of dirt at Thredbo. He is now out. He is out of his hole. He has been released. He is on a stretcher. He is somewhere behind that tree where those paramedics are working on him. He was brought out only moments ago, only a few moments ago. He had, all we could see of him were his feet, or is the lower half of his body, the lower half of his legs and his feet. Hugh, are you there? Hugh Riminton, are you there with us? Hugh Riminton, can you hear me? Okay, let's just keep recapping. Stuart Diver is out. We are watching the scene here live. These are live pictures from Thredbo. Hugh, can you hear me? I got you now.
Okay, Tracy.
Well, this is a wonderful moment.
Situation here. It is a wonderful moment. The strange thing is that there are a lot of people here I don't think quite realise that they're seeing what they're seeing. They've come down here and started to gather, and they've been waiting here for quite a while, particularly down just a little bit away from the media. And they seem nonplussed by it because it's a little obscure up there from this distance without the benefit of camera lenses. It's a sort of a restrained reaction because I don't think they know that the guy's out yet.
Okay, I think they're lifting him. We can see people stabilising, people who are helping to lift. We are about to see him. He is wrapped up in blue blankets. He is on a yellow stretcher. You can see him at the centre of this chain of people now. And he is out. This is Stuart Diver. This is the sole survivor of the Thredbo disaster so far. So far, there are 13 people still unaccounted for, but this is Stuart Diver who has been released from his hole underneath that collapsed, the two collapsed ski lodges.
Yeah, there's the chair. There's the chair going up. They've suddenly realised around here. They know that he's out.
Finally, they've realised that he's out. It is indeed a wonderful moment. Hugh, who's gathered there? Are there family and friends there?
Oh, not so much on this side. There are mainly people staying here, but some wearing those red outfits of the ski school. You can hear the cheering all the way up the valley now. This is spontaneous outpouring. It's been a long time coming, and unbelievable when you consider what's happened here over the last 3.5 days. But there you go, a great release of tension. They are drawing him up now over that final little steep bit, up through a corridor of emergency service workers, and they'll shortly bring him up onto the flat area, the road that they restored with that excavator, and then it'll be just a few short steps to an ambulance. Stuart Divers, his name is in fact released. His wife is somewhere still back there in that rubble, but let's not dwell on that for the moment. He is out, he's going to an ambulance, and well, they've said miracle. There it is for you.
It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful moment. And honestly, Hugh, I can't blame the crowd for not necessarily cottoning on when it actually happened, because we nearly missed it ourselves, and we were looking through zoom lenses. All we saw was suddenly a pair of bare feet, and they didn't seem to fit in the picture at all.
Yes.
When he was first brought out, his feet and the lower part of his legs were bare. I'm with Dr. Gordian Fulder, as I have been for quite some time now, who surmised that perhaps his clothes were wet, and initially when he was brought out of the hole, they couldn't get to his feet to wrap his legs up, and then they took his wet clothes off, wrapped him up in the blankets, and now he is in the pallet going into the ambulance, and what a wonderful sight that is. And look, there are smiles on faces up there. People are relieved. They are obviously very happy that this moment has finally arrived. It's been just about, well, it's been more than 11 and a half hours since he was first found, and that appears to be a family member who is going to... 2 or 3. Dr. Fulder is with me. He says he thinks he's seen 2 or 3 family members who will obviously, it would seem, be allowed to ride in the ambulance. Would that be right, Dr. Fulder? It would be very important to keep family with him, I'm sure.
Well, the ambulances are very constricted and they may not have the room for it. So, but there seem to be 2 or 3 or even more people who are definitely like rescue personnel who have been allowed to say hi.
It looks like an older man and an older lady before perhaps his parents. Now, we're looking at a close-up scene of the back of the ambulance. I've just seen those 2 people walk around the front of the ambulance. I haven't seen them get in the other side, but look, if they're not allowed in the same vehicle, they'll be not too far away, because it will be very important for him emotionally, I imagine, to have them with him. Absolutely.
As we keep saying, it's the will to live, the will to survive, and in the end of that, as we heard from the gentleman who survived the Himalayan, you've got to want to, and there's nothing like the love of your close friends and relatives to get you there.
And he wouldn't be sedated, he would be conscious. Sorry, Hugh.
Put this in another sort of a context, if I'm still attached to you. We've got to realise this is now 55 hours that we learnt that this guy was alive. It was still dark here. The sun is just about to go down. It is in deep twilight. They've spent all of this full day having discovered that he's alive, going through the process of trying to get him out. They've managed to get him out. And I'm sure that with him, as he went on that journey up the stretcher, seeing daylight for the first time since Wednesday, bear that in mind, many times he must have feared for whether he'd see that again, as he was entombed so deep beneath that impossible rubble. I don't know if he would have had a chance to have a look at what he'd emerged from, the sheer horror of what he'd emerged from. But I imagine that keeping him company on that little ride up that muddy track would have been the 2 paramedics who have been with him really from the start today. It is an extraordinary feeling here in Thredbo village. The workers are going back down again. They're coming back down that path and they're getting on with the job. But believe me, it's an extraordinary feeling here at the moment.
So the ambulance, Hugh, has just headed off. That looks like Bobuck Lane that was blocked for a time has been cleared. The ambulance is headed off up the hill. Will that then come down to the car park that's been a sort of makeshift chopper pad?
I think that would be the plan. I don't know if they're going to make further efforts to stabilise. He's in the ambulance, so I think he's got everything he needs. If they go to the plan that they've been working on for the last couple of days, should they have found a survivor, they will probably be moving him to that helicopter and then moving him on, presumably to Canberra, given that the spinal injuries question seems to have been answered in the negative, presumably to hospital in Canberra.
Dr. Fulder, do you have an insight into that?
From what I see, I still am a little guarded in as to the passing Mr. Diver is fully fit. I think that, you can't do much in the field, but from what we saw there, the feet, in other words, there was no way of properly assessing. I mean, we didn't see a lot of movement.
Let me just interrupt you for a moment, because on the other screen we are looking at members. It appears to be members of the ski patrol at Thredbo, and Stuart Diver was a member of the ski patrol. Is a member of the ski patrol, isn't he, Hugh? Is that your understanding?
I'm sorry, repeat that question.
The people in the red outfits that we just saw moving away, I'm theorising that they were members of the ski patrol at Thredbo, and is he a member? I know he's an instructor.
Yes, he is. He's a supervising instructor. He would normally wear that red outfit.
Right.
And there have been at various times during the day people from the ski patrol watching from this side of the valley, and also they let some in quite close, just up to the left-hand side of where they were doing all the work earlier on, just to keep an eye on things for themselves.
So they were his colleagues who were watching from down there and finally let up the hoot when it became clear that he was out.
Yes, and also other people, and you've got to realise that he has another range of colleagues because he was also a volunteer fireman. So the very people involved in the search, many of them knew him personally, knew him very well. And so he has a lot of people that he knows in this village, and a lot of people who have been burning with the desire to see him come out alive, as of course others. But he's well known in this village. There's some happiness, at least over this tonight.
There will be a sense of euphoria in the village. Hugh, on our monitor now we're watching, it looks like a mattress being dragged out. So the search is continuing. So a wonderful moment has happened. A man has seen light after, as you pointed out, something like 55 hours. He is now going to hospital, but back at the site, work continues because there are 13 people still there.
Tracy, if I can just continue just for one moment, there are two things going on right at this moment. There are, in fact, continuing a search lower down where the tarpaulins were, where the bodies were removed earlier. That continued out of sight of the cameras. The other thing I can tell you is I can hear that familiar wind-up of a helicopter just a few hundred metres away to my right, and I think that's his taxi off to hospital.
Okay, now that is the helicopter, and to put this in perspective for people who may be familiar with Thredbo, you believe that helicopter is in the car park opposite Friday Flat? Is that where you would say it's going to take off from? Hugh, are you still with me?
I'm sorry, there's a lot of traffic across my earpiece, so I can't always hear you. Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, that's right. There's a few people chatting in the background, but that's okay. Just to put in perspective for people who might know Thredbo, and it's obviously a popular resort in Australia, a lot of Australians have been there, do you think that the chopper is warming up in the car park, that makeshift chopper pad opposite Friday Flat?
Look, I can tell you, I might have made a minor fool of myself because the noise of that familiar sound of the engine winding up of the chopper might have been the crane that's just geared back up into action because they've been lifting in some more stuff for the other rescue or search operation that's been going lower down. So there's a surfeit of mechanical noise at the moment. I might be confused. I think the chopper
I think we'll forgive you. I think we'll forgive you because I think you've been up for how many hours now?
Oh, never mind about that. I think, in fact, the chopper pad, if they're going to use it, might be the one near the village itself, not Friday Flat, but I'm not 100% certain about that.
Okay. All right, Hugh, we're going to take a break, and we will be back in just a few moments.
Captain's log, stardate 496.